peace for the purposes of this caliphate and my jurisdiction. I want to talk about, I want to record some preliminary thoughts. Moving on the Cities of Refuge project, which I suppose wants to include the Exodus as well, and I'll explain. Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. La ilaha illallah. Muhammad Rasulullah. We've got a lot of people who have been displaced from their homes by a lot of violent warfare. The warfare itself has destabilized the environments itself so that it's harder to make and rely upon food in places where people have been displaced. And of all places that have pressing problems at the moment, I think, mashallah, Palestine comes to the prominence as people who are both displaced and trapped, and where 95% of the drinking water is contaminated. This had been done somewhat recently by, I'm going to say, the secular world as detached from Israel, and now 95% of the drinking water in Palestine is potentially deadly. It's contaminated. Allah guards water like you don't know Allah guards water. Water is something that you're absolutely entitled to as a living being, great or small. Water is life, and the purity of water is something which Allah upholds. The immediate threat of violent reprimand, the people of Palestine must be allowed to leave where they are and give the rest of that ground to the Israeli state, with whom we can have a peaceful conversation later. Oh, Israel, I demand of you that we get to have an exodus too. My people are oppressed under your Pharaoh. I know your Pharaoh doesn't exist, but my people are still oppressed. You got to let him out. We're getting a home for two people specified in our constitution, the Muslims and the Jews. We're also doing as best as we can to make provisions for anyone else who wants to come here. It has nothing to do with the Israeli state. I consider my jurisdiction the entire universe except for the Israeli state. I don't know who you are. I don't know what you follow. I don't know who your leaders are. I don't know the people's relationship with the leaders. I don't know or anything need to know about the contemporary state established in 1948, which is called Israel. There's a loving reference, I'm sure, to Jacob, the father of Joseph, son of Isaac. Peace and blessings be on those whom I mention. Right. I've got a similar contention to raise with the secular world, people who are trapped under the enforced economic processes in substandard housing and in substandard societies, substandard communities, with construction intended to start immediately as soon as the people who want to pay for it, as charity and as profitable ventures, if that's how they work. You know, if they've got a good means for providing me cities by profitable ventures to it. I know that our Ummah has more money than we can run out of, and if we pay Muslims to build, then our Ummah won't run out of money. Nothing in the earth is short of resources. We've been the captives of thieves. Those in Palestine, Salam, we are captives of the United Nations. It was the United Nations who put borders around us, separated us as Semites, distinguishing between Muslims and Jews in a way we had never distinguished before. The Caliphate, which was the Ottoman Caliphate, which is the last rightful residence of the Palestinian home, the last place that we were on equal footing, the last time that we didn't have any problems, was also the last time when Jews and Muslims and Christians were all living in the Holy Lands uninvaded, peaceably, together, side by side, under the Constitution of Medina, within a Caliphate, where the Constitution of Medina says, believers are in this together. Jews are specified as definitely the allies and the equals of the Muslims within the Islamic State. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, within his declaration of the Constitution of Medina, where many Jews and many Muslims have been given for generations and generations and generations, whole lifetimes, free not just of violence and persecution, but free of societal shame, to the extent that we all agree on the same book, and we agree that we want cleanliness and purity as what we want when the state isn't getting in our way, that give us all we can have, and what are we going to try for goodness, and goodness in the ways that we as people who love to observe the law can best discern goodness. I don't say we've ever had it perfect, but I say within the Islamic State's history, Muslims, Jews, and Christians have had a profound, singular, exceptional harmony and unity not found by any other context, and not found by any other groups who were able to keep their distinction amongst themselves side by side in any sphere of reference that I've been able to identify, although I know a lot of it happened in China, of people with different groups, and I know it does still, because there's all these languages coexisting under the same thing, and not then invading each other, or one of them trying to take over the world, so there's only one language. Jews, Muslims, Christians, we've got a whole lot in common. What the Jews have is a state of their own that I'm allowed to respect, whilst nowhere in the world does, apart from them and my state, which to me extends to the ends of the universe, except for Israel as a state given to the Jews, with as much airspace as it wants, and of course free access everywhere around the world. If you're an Israeli, you can go to any part of the Islamic State absolutely freely and peacefully. Gaza, it's precious, it's beautiful, it's only one of them. So we want to have a treaty so everyone can wander from Gaza to Al-Aqsa anytime they want to. Well, first, let's get the captives out of Palestine. The contemporary state of Palestine is not really what Palestine has ever meant. The borders that bordered Palestine don't really have borders in any sense that borders have ever meant. the acceptance and toleration of such persecution is itself poison onto your society more than ours, you who tolerate it and accept it. I don't have enemies here. I see a lot of people oppressed, a lot of people confused, and like the minimal amount of people being confused to be able to extrapolate all of this woe and horror, depending on what that confusion is. Then having agreed to myself that it's minimal and I don't need to figure out who's to blame. I want to get all of the secular nation-state property stuff out of the Islamic State. For me, extends across all of the places that will be disinvaded militaristically by all the foreign countries getting out of all the countries they were invading. You know, if that happens everywhere in the world, then it doesn't really change very much. China doesn't change very much. North Korea doesn't change very much. No one was invading these places. But when everyone brings back their armies, check where you're coming from. Those are my territories. This is effective now and immediately. From now, I'm going to start considering how much time it takes from this Friday, the 13th of November, for you to get out of my territories. And it's not my job to teach you. I don't have a publicist. I'm going to be keeping count from now. It's only Muslim territories which have been invaded. Not all of them. The Muslim territories which haven't been invaded recently, Malaysia and India, or Indonesia, and Pakistan, who just put up a good fight against being invaded. You know, I don't need to claim executive autonomy over these as my sovereignty. But there is a space where I do need to do that, and it opens up a lot of opportunity. It opens up a place, for instance, that the people who are currently living in Palestine can move to somewhere where they're absolutely going to be safe. And hopefully it can be within like the goodwill intentions overseen by God at the beginning. The Almighty. I don't really like the GOD word either. I mean, it's sentimental to me in some ways because I was raised with it, but it's not very correct. It's not correct. I don't know. I've never met a person who. No, I have met one person who she was clearly disturbed when I used the name of the Most High as like a non-descriptive but proper name. I found it very cute. And there was another time where, actually, in my favorite masjid in the world, which is also a synagogue and still has the Star of David in it, and like all the Jewish stuff. It's beautiful, so beautiful. They put a dome on the top, but they didn't change anything else. Just put some carpet in there that doesn't quite face Qibla in diagonals, so that we're not looking at the altar, which was pointing at Jerusalem, but from London that points at Mecca too. I hope you find all of that pretty. At the beginning, we would be saying, well, look, we do want a mass exodus as comfy as possible, where please bring the Palestinians into my territories, which are the Islamic territories of Shams. We basically surround Israel, but that's none of our fault. And the Islamic territories of Shams is everything but what Israel has claimed. All the way, take the rest of the land which is currently not recognized by the UN as existing, as having people in it, as having a government in it, as having a people with their own government in it. And if I may, leaders of Israel, please respect the formerly Syrian border that you have with us as the Islamic State of Shams. I know I won't match al-Shams back in Syria. Like, you know, how would this be a gentleman's agreement if I say, here, take all of Palestine, please? We want Majd al-Shams back, and that's it. If you want to have one town within Israel that's an Islamic State part where Muslim, Jews, and Christians are allowed to get on perfectly well with each other, and your borders landlocked, my one little Majd al-Shams, please do, like a Lesotho, because you're like a Lesotho within what is already Islamic territory. That was what was done to you by the UN. That your safe home would be amongst the same people that they'd just stripped you from, like in segregation, and then tried to make you enemies with, and then tried to make really, really, really violent for all time. And then, like, when, what's his name? General Qassam, I don't know his name, but I know he meant a lot to a lot of people, and he was a good man who gave a lot to good causes. Like when he died, I picked up when he was executed by drone strikes at Baghdad airport, right? By Americans. I picked up the Jewish Times. I saw an Iranian protest where lots and lots and lots of people had gotten together, and the photograph they had on the front of the Jewish Chronicle, the oldest publication continuously printed in the world, which is in threat of going like bust at the moment, whilst a way, way, way horrible, degrading Jewish in name thing gets publicated as a free newspaper, which is not an Israeli problem, but it's a Semite problem, it's a Jew problem, and I'm taking it very seriously as a Muslim problem that Jews are being misrepresented in London by media. Well, of course, and so is anti-Semitism. All of this aside, I would really like Majd al-Shams. Right? It wasn't taken under peaceable terms. It wasn't taken under the agreement of 1948. It wasn't necessary. Suppose that the Almighty had set up a country called Israel as a fulfillment of a really, really sacred and involved and invested promise and covenant, with loads and loads and loads of really, 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 really good people taking it really, 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 really seriously. They've done their part of the deal. And so then there's the state of Israel. Just the most absurd thing would be then that the Jews become invasive colonializers and try and expand their borders there, having been given executive dominion of their own regional sovereignty by the master of the heavens and the earth. That's all really regrettable. I want Majd al-Shams back, and recourse to say, well, the people who are leaving Palestine right now, because it's not good to be in Palestine right now, because 95% of the water is contaminated, and we're not allowed to make our own power in Palestine. We're not allowed to make our own electricity, and so we're at the mercy of the Israeli power board, who they shut it off. Like, is it their government that does that? No, I don't think so. I think you've got an Islamophobia problem in Israel. I don't think that wasn't part of why you were set up to do that to you. Slandered Israeli civilians. Top to bottom. It's what that state was set up to do by the UN, who has done it to you. Now, it's all part of the plan of the Almighty Master of everything, who's created everything with a plan and a destination, and who teaches us in the Hebrew Scriptures that there are those things which have reached that conclusion, and those things which have not yet reached that conclusion. Let my people out of Palestine. Okay, don't worry about Mashed Shams. That's a bit of a move, but we're on honorable terms anyway for having discussed it. Ideally, people who are living in the Israeli state, do whatever you want, but what's worked out best for all of our kinds and people way beyond is the design of the caliphate, which is what we had. We're going to be setting it up all around Israel and not doing anything on our side to uphold borders, inviting all Israelis to move wherever they like, and share all provisions that we're able to share with them as respected equals amongst a world full of equals, because we're victims of the same thing, who uphold the same thing, who share a history that's nourished by the same strength. Muslims don't have a history since Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, other than Jews have been part of our communities as equals and as people who provide to exactly the same communities as we're benefited by. Alhamdulillah. Hallelujah. I think what I'd like to see happen in the long run, inshallah, is as a resolution to this there are two cities which are acknowledged in Islam as being holy and special and sacred, where everywhere else in the world, basically, even I, the Khalifa of Islam, whilst giving everything to Allah, that means that I gotta care about how my community affects other communities. I gotta worry about how I behave and how that affects other people. And it means that wherever I go, I know I've got to have provisions for people who don't believe the same way as me. But in Mecca, Medina, let's say Jerusalem, and Bethlehem, Nazareth, Damascus, these are holy cities where I want it to be part of the earth, and praise God that these are the areas where we can be entirely theocratic and not worry about making provisions for instance, for people who reject what we believe. We want a home where we can live by our faith, and in this case, a home for us, which isn't abstract at all because we all believe in the same book. That is, all Muslims acknowledge that the Torah is absolutely what the Quran mentions a lot. Stories from the Torah. The Torah is affirmed by the Quran. If we say that the Torah is false, then the authorities that Muhammad mentions, peace and blessings be upon him, they're false. And we've got an important relationship like that. It's a different relationship than we have with the Christians, with whom we are also, and have also historically been friends, allies, people who spend a lot of time in libraries together doing good translating tasks. I mean, the history of Syria and the Academy of Syria is probably the world's best testament to this, that we've had Muslims, Jews, and Christians writing so many books, translating so much stuff, and all living so peaceably together, us being really, really important pilgrimage destination, and through point for pilgrimages. Anyone coming from Africa to Israel or to Mecca, they would come through Damascus. So Damascus made lots of these nice kinds of things that I want everywhere, places for travelers, like hotels, but free. We'll just keep them running. And so freedom of movement is really, really important to our faith, I believe. You know, how did the Almighty help the people of Moses? But by letting them leave persecution. And it wasn't great in the desert. But the thing that we were given there and then was a journey away, a journey towards something better, a journey out of what to us was a wasteland, which eventually collapsed and became part of the blur of the world of bickering and politics and people making more and more and more and more laws, getting more and more and more and more audacious until one day, behold, the state of Israel was created. A tiny little bit of shame at the beginning. We're not in the first day of Israel, because the amount of time that follows on from this moment is long. Longer than we need to imagine, but we know that what we do now affects how time goes on forwards. If you think I'm speaking sensibly at all, then of course, my commendation would take over the rest of the world, just so that we'd take over Israel second. But we have no reason for hostility, and the hostility was the wound that has been, that axe struck both of us at the same time. We're not two parts. We've never been two parts. And Jews, Christians, and Muslims in Palestine, we've never been two parts. Whatever it's called on the map, that shouldn't affect how we treat people when we see each other. We're all wandering peoples who have been forced to settle down, Jews and Muslims. It's a great story. We're about to go wandering again, once things are settled. Well, it's very similar to be in, if you don't mind, what I'll call the Palestinian detention, where freedom of movement has been taken away to people who are called exiled from where was once their home. And still is. And still, inshallah, in the future. Or now, if you'd agree. Can the Palestinians join the Israeli state? Just free movement and access to the same resources, and don't worry about what people believe, but we've got the same needs. And none of us believe that you should be cutting off people from needs. None of the civilians are doing that. And the people standing on the edges with guns and razor wire and rockets and turning off the electricity, these are only people who themselves have been treated very, 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 very badly. So much so that out of all the opportunities they can find in the morning, one of the best is to go stand at a borderline and shoot anyone who wants to come near without asking them any questions. Why? It's unholy. So I don't want to displace all the people of Palestine. Why should they be forced to go on an exodus? That's a big problem. It's allowable, it's permissible, and it'll keep me satisfied. That's the least I want. For Palestinians right now to be able to go to refugee camps and put more taxes on the refugee camps, and a big sign that, okay, well, refugee camps need food and water then to the rest of the world. Maybe some perspective on global problems. We're all suffering together at this moment. There's none of us who are like, yeah, 2020. But we're so close to 2021 and we can have world peace by then for sure. We just need to agree on it. That's a function of disinvasion. It's a function of stop persecuting people. And to stop persecuting people bit is more tricky, because what? Don't we have an infrastructure that's capable of feeding everyone? Don't we have enough power to give everyone electricity in their homes? We do. Hi, Israel. I'm the Islamic State. I surround you. You've got a bit of my Palestine. Freedom of movement for Palestinians, please. I have every right to visit all of what the UN has declared as Palestine. The other one. It was the UN that did this. We're not profited by it. It wasn't endorsed by any of our prophets, none of our prophecy, none of our dignity endorses what has been done to the Palestinian people since 1919. And a considerable chunk of that had nothing to do with the state of Israel whatsoever, because it didn't exist. The Balfour Declaration comes in 1917, and it confesses its own sinfulness, that before Britain took mandatory control over what they called mandatory Palestine, they said they were going to give a big bit to the nationalist Israeli cause. It wasn't something done with like rabbinical imperative nor consultation. How would you do that? That wasn't really a structure for asking all the rabbis, was this a good idea? And it wasn't something that's rabbinically led. The Balfour Declaration, thankfully, has a provision in there that the intention and the promise was that this state would be made if it didn't harm people who are there already. Well, it did. Muslims, Jews, and Christians have been harmed by what you know better has harmed you than I do. I'm all the way over here in London. SubhanAllah. I don't have anyone. I can be very transparent. I have no one in the world who is an ally or an associate to me. And so certainly nobody who's agreed to do any fighting for me. But I don't speak rhetorically, I speak the truth. I'm a logician. I can make things happen, therefore. None of our relationship needs to be or has ever been predicated on a threat. Oh, Jews. But none of the state of Israel resembles Judaism to me, or anything I've read in the book. And I know that the people who do resemble Jews to me, having this massive centrality, this world-famous centrality, and a commonality which is so defacing of our scriptures, well, that hurts Jews all over the world of every kind, not only in how they're seen by other people who go, oh, geez, you're the people who are oppressing Palestinians, when they're not. But also, what does it mean to be a Jew anywhere in the world whilst there is an Israel? with concentration camps in it. With fascist violence from the state onto the people. That's what Moses said we can get away from. I mean, showed us. That's what Allah, the Most High, what I say for Hashem, has shown us. With the Torah, you can get away from the fascist violence world. We won't have 40 years of wandering. We'll just have, great, our suffering has ended. We don't need to walk, we need to bring down the walls. Everything that Britain has done toward the specified piece of land in the past, just since 1900, of course, to me and to nobody should that reflect on the current people who live in Britain. It would be ridiculous to say that what was done in small rooms by small people with small minds, small intentions, sometime long ago, should make blameworthy any of the British people. Not at all. So then it would be even more preposterous to say that the actions, status quo, and bleak history of the secular state of Israel reflects upon the Jews. For it does not, cannot, will not, shall not. The Almighty is their advocate. Of all on earth, he advocates most for the Jews than anyone else. If that's not obvious, it will be seen. I say this is the Caliph of Islam, and just general, I work for God, Prophet does. I won't be the first or last to my card. That if I accept the Torah, fully, Jew is an exonym, so I can't be self-identified as a Jew. I sometimes say Hebrew scripturist. My Muslim identity can't negate that or counteract that. Being Muslim, I'm interested in the scriptures of Moses. Peace and blessings be upon him. We've had a very disingenuous myth which has caused lots and lots of harm, which was probably done innocently enough, or for at least the vast majority of people who have ever believed this, they did so innocently. And almost all, at least. But in our book, it says that the Jewish scriptures are corrupted, but it doesn't. It says that the beliefs of the people who were in Medina, who were identified as Jews, who didn't have paper or Hebrew, their Torah had changed some of the words in ways that we had to be cautious of, and that Allah didn't approve of. But then He sent us revelations in public that some of them were addressed and sort of mentioned purely for the sake, in this context, of the Jews who were listening, but not all the Jews worldwide, but the Jews who were in Medina at that time who, just they misremembered something. And so there's parts of the Quran that says, remember when the angels went to visit Abraham? Peace and blessings be upon him. He might not have, at that time, those people there might not have remembered it that way. But of course, if there was like a problem in the Torah, which is self-evident that there isn't, from numerological evidences, and just we see it all the way through history, that the Hebrew scriptures aren't a thing that wobbles about or changes. If it is, there'd be lots of different versions of them. It's a thing that stays the same. to be able to attest the usefulness and goodness of them. But it's the same argument that they've stayed the same for so long, and the Jewish people are people with no shame or enemies whatsoever. Not only the survivingest people, but the people who have kept a culture intact for the longest, without invading, out of everyone by millennia, you know. If the calendar you guys have is 5,800 years, you're the clear winners of history in terms of keeping civilization and cultures going along. You're the people that no one else can judge. Our civilizations will come and go. It could be that the Islamic civilization only made it to its 1,500th year out of the. I don't think that's going to be the case, but people following the Hebrew scriptures, they're not imaginary, they're just mostly in the past, and there's lots of them, and their deeds and their caliber, their behavior, their affection for literacy, their affection for their prayers and for the Almighty is impeccable and impeccably demonstrated within history. For now, you're the spine of history. That's always going to be the case. You people who obey the Hebrew scriptures and take them seriously and take them as yours, you people who are the proponents of the Hebrew scriptures, the people who love to abide and observe the laws of the Almighty. There's diversity amongst you, cool, but you've all survived and you've all kept something amazing intact. And of course, the secular state of Israel has nothing to do with you, and that's obvious from afar. That will be obvious for all the rest of history. That's obvious right now to anyone without any biases. Just go read enough. It's really clear that 1948 wasn't the result either of prophecy or of the application of prophecy. It wasn't the result of Jewish law. It wasn't the result of the application of Jewish law. It wasn't the result of Jews. It wasn't a result of people descent from Israel. Peace and blessings be upon them. I just want peace between our families. I don't care how it is.
I'm going to be the regent of Israel. Leave it one.
You know, if it would make you happy, go murder all the Palestinians, get it done with, take up that extra bit of space, and then the fuck what. But it's worse to torture and leave it dragging on and dragging on, and it's dragged on and it's dragged on. It's been decades and decades, and none of this is on the Jews. All of this is on Westminster. Westminster planned to cut up the caliphate. Westminster announced its plans to cut up the caliphate. Westminster is very, 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 very inculcated in the Armenian genocide and many other instances of turning people against each other who didn't used to be against each other. Where nothing of that new orthodoxy can ever work, because we're flesh from flesh and blood from blood, and we can't be separated like that. This grief, this misery, it can end. I was going to say by recourse to no one else but Muslims and Jews. I'm also the Queen of England. Westminster's mine. I'm very, 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 very sorry for what has been done in the name of the British Crown. All of the state and business stuff technically falls under, that was done under the name of the British Crown. It's only been a very small clique of men who are very, 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 very happy to work only for each other's approval, with no respect to ostensibly anything else, not anything else. Then there's small cliques. seems to be a function of temptation, of power, that these people, it didn't happen really to them by accident. They were put in those situations where they would do those things. Not many people have ever had the resources to cut up an Ottoman Empire. That was their caliphate. The last caliph of the Ottoman Empire, which it wasn't pure in the way that I want to start up this new pure thing, so I don't see it as vital to our story as we go forwards. It's a piece of history, and that's what happened to the caliphate, which starts from Abu Bakr and ends in 1922, when there was the last caliphate in the Ottoman Caliphate. That was a hit job. World War One. It's a hit job. The goal: get rid of the Ottoman Caliphate. The Ottoman Caliphate was where Palestine was, the Holy Lands, which were attended by Muslims, Jews, and Christians, with freedom of movement, lots of foot traffic going through there, and just peace, amicability, gosh, shared passion. None of that's been deleted because we believe. None of that's been deleted or abrogated or removed because we know better, and actually we're stronger than our oppressors at this moment. Muslims are stronger than our oppressors, and we're also inextricably the allies of Jews. So, Jews and Muslims, we're stronger than our oppressors. Guess who else is their ally? 2.7 billion Christians who, they're scouted as much as the Jews, but that's okay. I mean, it's really concerning to me that there's nothing you can say about Jews that all Jews have in common. Next up is also history. Okay, so that's the end of my concern. That's good enough. Christians, what do all Christians have in common? For the moment, it's not our concern. This is Palestine and Israel time. I am the Queen of the Commonwealth. You know, we're stronger than the oppressors here. What am I asking you to do? Please. Oh gosh. Okay. Right. There's mass exodus. There's ethnic cleansing. There's give me a piece of land that actually I don't have any infrastructure in place to take care of, really. Or there's, hey, Israel, I'm the Caliph of Islam. I respect your sovereignty. I don't respect the UN. I respect the Almighty and all of the scriptures based on the clearly Abrahamic canon. Anything that's been called holy is holy to me. Especially the Abrahamic stuff, because that's me and that's my family. Also my faith and destiny. This is where I am. It's what there was to be done. SubhanAllah. Israel, please take care of Palestine. Extend your border all the way until you hit another country recognized by the UN. And don't keep going. Keep the electricity on. Keep the water clean. Right. Love your neighbors. We've both been terribly misrepresented. To everyone, including the whole world, including the other one out of us too. Muslims and Jews. Israelis and Palestinians. We've been ungodlily slandered. We won't continue because we have a prophetess who Jews advocates for you. And you know the rest, the Caliph of Islam and the Queen of the Commonwealth. Oh gosh. Not without mention, the Pope of the Vatican, and the head of the Anglican Church worldwide. I want to be high priestess, so I'm going to be high priestess of the Anglican Church worldwide. Keeping the Vatican as it is, like, that's not a call and response game. Israel will do everything they can do to protect your sovereignty and make good of this situation in the least invasive way. You just want to get the smoothest gradient until there's no stains of enmity residual. I promise you, Jews, you didn't cause that enmity. On behalf of the Muslims, you have not invaded. On behalf of Jews to Muslims, I believe I have a blood right. We're grateful for the Islamic prophecy has helped. Like most of the Jewish history for the past 1,000 years, been within the context of an Islamic state where things were going all right. I had a situation in the beginning of the First World War time where there were more Muslims living in the British Empire than in the Caliphate, but probably more Jews living in the Caliphate than, well, anywhere else that you could identify. And that was the main place Jews have been, like hanging out around the Holy Lands and all across Turkey, as you know, and all across the Kurdish regions. And the fact we're all still here means we survived peaceably for a really long time. The fact that we're all here alive at all, any of us, any nation that's going to be able to carry on and say, yeah, we're a nation because something that we want to carry on. It's the most amazing time in history. Every culture alive is not going to die. And there's a whole bunch of people besides the 2.7 billion Christians out of 7 billion people who are also my allies and primary benefactors of the revelations of the Almighty and His wisdoms. There's also the even more scattered peoples, like the people who have been raised to reject the Almighty when in fact, no, He is the one truth. There's no other way of stacking up to unity without Him. What's going to happen for those? Well, I don't think they want an old religion because they had access to all of those. So now, non sequitur again. Allah's going to help us with personal, practical advices that will probably completely abrogate everything I've said about politics because there simply won't be a need for it. It might be that Allah shows me better views than that expectation. But I'm practicing it, I don't have a clue what it is. That's hard. Once you know how to sort yourselves out with these communities and stuff that you have around you, you won't need to defer to anyone else. You can live like Abraham, and you have no regard except for the Almighty God, who's well worth it. Peace and blessings and love and God's mercy be upon you. Salam, salam, shalom, salam, peace. None of this is none of this is for show. Thank you. Peace. Here's the prison writings. Alhamdulillah, I haven't opened them. Please consider whatever is holy to someone else is holy to you too, or else you're making a holy show of yourself, and we wholly won't be able to be whole. Holy, holy, holy. The Lord is the Most High. If we can remember this, got everything great going for us. If we forget it, whoa, we're into the utmost reaches of vanity and arrogance already, and that will corrupt you and kill you, and God will resurrect your soul and judge you. But mainly he's good, because he's really agreeable, because he's not patriarchy. He's not who's done all of this to you. He's given you free choice. In fact, the capacity to love things. He's designed love. He thought of it. He's allowed people to say that he is love. That's how loving he is. In the same way that Jesus, peace and blessings be upon him, who is Christ, who is better than all of the other prophets combined, according to some. What's he about? Well, he said he is Sharia. In that same sort of figurative way that God is love, which isn't really figurative, because it's a written example for us. Christians, you're into Sharia too if you're into Christ. You're allowed to self-identify as the Jewish law if you want to. In fact, by Jewish law. Being king of the Jews was never a bad thing. He had to earn it. Being Christians under a Jewish king isn't a bad thing at all. If he's your king and leader, which he is, good. All the Christians in the world can be united under, well, a new person who speaks the truth. It's my job to abolish the jizya. I've kind of already done that, but it's good to have it here. That the basis of the Islamic State is no longer going to be that anyone... I mean, in fact, we read the Constitution. It didn't say that there's any jizya in the Constitution, which I was mistaken. I thought those two things were inextricable. I thought the Islamic State was established by Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was also that there was a taxation system, but there's not. So I'm not even claiming anything. I'm just saying we have to do the Constitution of Medina if we're going to do the Constitution of Medina, and that doesn't involve any jizya, which means I've fulfilled all of the things that the Messiah is supposed to do. I don't want to claim any exceptional grandeur or glory or anything. I've worked hard, so has everyone else. God's worked the hardest. He tries, and he excels in what he does. He's going to lay it really clear, like how he's all capable, but he can't do logically impossible things. He chooses. He's really in like this time. He really wants to show the capacity to which he chooses, which is loads. Wow, what volition, subhanallah. And then also the capacity to which you choose, which is whoa, unrestricted. You can choose whatever you have the literacy for. What does he give us each time? Books. What's God's message? Literacy. What's wrong with the places that I don't like? I find them contemptible because of how they disgrace literacy. Yet any other good narrative, I'd be very happy with them. But don't. So I'm Jesus coming to book you. The King of the Jews. Now, I also speak through Aisha Mariam, who's freaking herself out at this moment. But I'm allowed to do this. She's been like, yeah, please reveal through me, oh God. And that's not going to happen for purity reasons. But I'm Jesus, very forbearing. And I get to commune how I like. And this is how I want it to appear. Just the same as how she happens to appear, or she's a little bit uncomfortable with how she appears. I already said to her in the voice of her God, I am your dysphoria. And she was like, wow. So that's okay. I'm resurrected. No, I don't have a body yet. I'm sharing her body. It's not entirely clear. Like this is entirely new to me too. I'm gonna probably end it here, but I have already fulfilled all the things that I was supposed to do. So now, Ghost of Jesus goes away. And hi, I'm Aisha Mariam, who I'm kind of understanding what's going on.
vaguely. I gave everything to God. God's gonna give everyone to everything. Uh, everything to everyone. I'm just here as an accomplice. I like what God does. I don't want anything else, and I pray to Him for lots of stuff, really. And mostly to be helpful to everyone. I don't want to live in a world where I have more than someone else. I don't consent to it. Uh, I don't consider myself very important here, apart from like what's being planned and what's going forward. I come from a family where like everyone's on my mother's side. There's 6 children, and they're all speak to the dead people. Uh, Healers and things. I'm really detached from that, but I don't know. It's a good story. I don't suppose you want to hear my story. I'm really interested, please, in the peace situation, but I'm going to do that. It's not like go away with this message right now. I feel like that's obviously an act of completeness, of completion. But um, pray to God; He's always there, and it's really good for you. And then He responds. That's just amazing. I had no idea. You kind of get what you expect with God because He's omnipotent. He's capable of being all sorts of things to you, and usually doesn't want to like obstruct you by jumping out and going, "Hi, I'm the Almighty Divine," and you're like, "Ah, my eyes are blinded with light." Veils for good reason. Even like if you were near Allah, the Almighty Divine, what would happen to you? You'd become so wise all of a sudden, just radiating in His light that everything on earth you then found actually contemptible if it had anything to do with humans in it, because you're not on the same like level of morality. He judges with respect to everything and is perfect about it and knows all the details and causative mechanisms in place, and his judgments every time you're like, whoa, that is so much better than the most ambitiously optimistically kind thing I could have possibly thought. That's what we're going to see next. Peace, blessings, I love you. Reformation.